Hey there, everybody. We're Chris and Eli with Landlord Gurus, and recently we launched our Landlording A to Z online class. And so today we just wanted to tell you a little bit about it. As an example, we're going to go over what we talk about in lesson two of our course, which handles the landlord's legal and regulatory requirements, including compliance with relevant landlord tenant laws. So, as a bit of a taste, here's some of the content we cover. We hope you go check it out, sign up, and let us know what you think. And we'll put a link to the course in the notes below. So, again, here's just a top level view of some of the content we cover in the legal and regulatory requirements. To begin with, we go over the kind of an overview of legal responsibilities, and these responsibilities include number one, drafting and adhering to lease agreements, two, complying with local, state, and federal laws, three, ensuring safe and habitable living conditions, and four, handling security deposits appropriately. So, Eli, you want to take number one and talk about the lease agreements a little bit?
Sure. Yep. Yep. So the first part of this lesson goes into forming a strong lease agreement and talks about what goes into it. So, top level the things that we touch on, which some of which seem obvious, but we get it all out there to make sure that you cover everything. So, we cover things like make sure that all the parties, 18 years or older, who's going to be living at a property is on the lease. Make sure you have a thorough description of the property, where these people are going to be living, what unit, what property, what they're entitled to. Does it include the yard? What are the terms, both in terms of the time that they're signing up to live there, and what are the terms in terms of, of rent amount and utilities and all that type of thing. We talk about security deposits, how maintenance and repairs are covered, and we talk about any specific house rules or regulations that uh, are important, to your particular circumstance and property. And having all that out there is really important. Chris, do you want to talk about number two, complying with federal, state, and local landlord tenant laws?
Yeah, so the second thing is complying with all your relevant laws. For example, the most common federal laws are the Federal Fair Housing Act, FHA. And, we get into this and we talk about the different protected classes under the Fair Housing Act. And there are seven classes or categories of people protected against discrimination. We talk about the Americans with Disabilities Act or the ADA, where maybe you need accessible entrances or common areas, different rules for unit modifications and whether what the rules are around service or assistance animals. So we go into that in a little more detail. We also talk about your local and state landlord tenant laws. So, for example, your local laws can include things like zoning, noise restrictions, pest control, rental registrations, and various building codes. State laws might include, depending on where you are, different security deposit limits, what your notice periods might be for giving notices, and what your eviction procedures are and how you go about doing that should you get into that situation. We also talk about trends in state and local landlord tenant laws that we think all landlords need to be aware of, even if they're not happening in your location yet, that they might be coming. So we talk about that, things like rent increase rules and various limits and late fees that might be imposed or regulated. We talk about ban the box. We talk about tenant selection criteria, just cause tenancy, different income sources that you can look at or might have to look at. We talk about whether or not you can use criminal records when evaluating tenants. And then, of course, we talk about eviction rules and procedures, relocation assistance if that's necessary, and then any type of rules and limits around security deposits. So, some of which may not apply to everybody, but they are things that, again, we think are good to consider and to know about. So, we go over all that in
Right.
the course.
Right. The legal landscape is changing rapidly these days. So
Yeah,
we go through all that so that you know what to look for and make sure that you're on top of everything, because
yep,
it takes a lot of effort these days to
for
stay on
sure.
top of everything. Okay, so our third bucket is ensuring safe and habitable living conditions. So we talk a bit about just the physical structure, its integrity, uh, some dangers that can come up, common ones that you want to check for, and also kind of check on the standards and rules around things like trip hazards or railings and guardrails. Where do they need to be, and how high do they need to be? Those things will vary in some places, but they're common things to pay attention to.
I just say that I just had to deal with it. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah,
Oh
with
yeah,
insurance, like a lot of times
yeah.
insurance is coming to check on whether you have these things like railings and guardrails as well. So anyway,
Insurance
yeah,
is
go on.
is increasingly picky these days. Yeah,
Yep,
there's a lot that going into that. So we also talk about essential utilities, basically kind of life-sustaining utilities, electricity, water, heat, that type of thing. Generally required to provide those things, and we get it all out there so you're aware. We talk about safety features such as smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, fire extinguishers, ladders, fire escapes, that type of thing. And we also go into sanitation and pest control. Again, the habitability, safety of your property. And as a part of this, we also talk about who is responsible for maintenance and repairs. So we break down landlords' responsibilities to provide, fundamentally a habitable and safe living environment, maintaining the structural integrity of the property, and addressing all reasonable repairs that are requested promptly. Whereas a tenant's responsibility, on the other hand, generally speaking, we go into how they're responsible for taking care of the property and what that means, and also bringing to attention any issues to the landlord so that they can be taken care of before they get to be a bigger problem, and maybe somebody gets hurt or there's damage to the property and that type of thing. So we break down who's
exactly.
who's responsible for what.
Yep, exactly. And then the last thing we talk about in the course in this lesson is a landlord's responsibility is to handle the security deposits appropriately. So there are a lot of regulations depending on where you are. They vary state by state, but there are regulations around handling security deposits. And so landlords must generally, you know, indicate a purpose, how much the deposit is going to be for, how and where landlords are required to hold the deposit, whether that's in a separate account in a bank. And then there are procedures around how and when to return the security deposit. And then, as far as if any of it was withheld to handle repairs or anything at the property, then a lot of times that has to be documented properly. And so we get into kind of what various rules there are around these and kind of best practices for handling security deposits.
Right, exactly. So that's kind of a really quick high level view of everything we cover in this lesson. And while this lesson covers legal and regulatory requirements for landlords, our other lessons cover topics such as marketing vacancies, selecting tenants, and managing maintenance, for example. There are 10 lessons in all. We've designed this course to cover each of the fundamental tasks involved in managing your rental property, and we've also included a module that touches on some of the more advanced topics, so that again you can be aware of those things. And then we may go on to create additional courses on themselves. Landlording A to Z will get you up to speed on managing your property if you're just starting out. It can help you focus on best practices if you're already established as a property manager or a landlord. And it'll give you tips and insights no matter where you are in that journey. This is where we share our years of experience and some of the ways of doing things that we found work well. We hope you follow the link in the description below to check out the course and share it with anybody you think might be interested or might be helped by it. And as always, please subscribe to this channel so that once we put out new content, you'll be alerted and you can come check it out. Please leave comments or questions if you have them. And thanks for watching. We hope you check out Landlord A to Z. Thanks.
Thanks.